Alrighty, Pacer Nation, what is going on? It feels good. Now, the Pacers do not have to go out and play any more games for a little while. It looks like, as we're recording this right now, it'll be a Wednesday tip-off for the Eastern Conference Finals against whoever wins between the Celtics and the Knicks. But joining Facci and I today to talk about what we just saw in that 5-game series against the Cleveland Cavaliers is Derek Schultz. And Derek, you were on to preview this series with us. So now that you've seen everything, what was the biggest takeaway from that series?
My biggest takeaway from that series was just how much the Pacers really dominated the series for the most part. I think I wasn't alone in doing this. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Alex, you were the outlier, right? You had Pacers, yep. and Facci and I both had Cavs in 7. And look, we weren't alone in doing that, right? I saw this statistic or the graphic, I guess, that ESPN put up where every single one of their experts, I think there were 12 of them, every single one picked the Cavs to win the series. Vegas had the Cavaliers as like a 5.5 to 8.5 point favorite in every single game in that entire series, right? So I don't feel as sheepish in picking the Cavs, but what really surprises me, guys, about the way that it went, I remember the first question that you asked me the last time I came on the show, and I think it was from Alex, was, where can the Pacers take advantage in this series? And it caught me flat-footed because I'm thinking to myself, well, God, all the advantages the Pacers have, like their shooting ability and their depth, are things that the Cavs have. Mm-hmm. And yet, like those two things especially, their shot-making ability and their depth really didn't show up at all in this series. And some of that is variance, right? I think game 1 is a great example of where shooting variance sometimes in a playoff game, or the Pacers are just making everything, right? They're getting good looks and all that, but they're making everything, and the Cavs are missing everything. Like, that happens. That's life. That's sports. Some of that is based on luck and just, whatever, variance, like I said. But I think for the most part, the Pacers deserve a lot of credit for doing well in creating great shots for themselves and not necessarily creating some great shots for Cleveland. But I am surprised how little Cleveland was a really good team this year, guys. 64 wins, and they have some really good players. And you look around at that roster outside of Mitchell, who has basically had to be Superman. You look at the real impact, like Jared Allen in this series, and I know Darius Garland was hurt, so maybe you give him a little bit of a break. But you look around the rest of this roster, and like, who was their second best player? Was it Strus, at least until last night? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I am surprised at how easy the Pacers made it look. You could have talked me into the Pacers winning that series. I don't think it was outlandish to think that the Pacers could win a 7-game series against Cleveland. I think it was outlandish 2 weeks ago to think that they would do it in 5 games and have the blowout win that they had in game 4 and win in Cleveland 3 times. Insane to me.
I mean, there's been some stats going around that Cleveland only had 5 losses at home outside of the 5 that they had to the Indiana Pacers. I mean, what Indiana did to Cleveland was something that I just don't think anybody could have predicted. And you and I, we got some heat for picking the Cavs in 7, which was better than what the national media was saying. I mean, a lot of us saying Cavs in 5, Cavs in 6. I thought it was going to be a dogfight, just like you did. I thought we were going to give them everything they could handle, and they were going to give us everything they could handle. But obviously, we know didn't work out that way. But I thought something that's interesting is when we first walked into the playoffs, people were saying, Pacers, Bucks, who do you got? Oh, I haven't watched much Pacer basketball, so I'll say the Bucks. Or, it's the Pacers. Just gave us nothing. I mean, not even one little thing to go off of. And in the last 24 hours, everyone seems to be an expert on the Indiana Pacers, talking about, how deep of a team they are and how they're a real threat. And, selfishly, I love it. But how does that feel to hear that we're actually getting talked about for not Tyrese's dad making an impact or a scene at one of the games, but for our talent and what we could do as it relates to this playoff pool?
Yeah, I've been in this. I've lived in this city for 20 years, and I've been in this sports market for basically all of that. And I can tell you that as much as people may get defensive and say, "Whoa, we don't care about that," like ESPN and the national media, we don't even want them to talk about us, whatever. And they kind of carry that chip on their shoulder. They're lying. They're lying.
I got
people.
I'm
yeah. I mean, people want that, right? People crave that. And that's not just a sports thing. That's like a Midwest thing just in general. That's just the Midwest vibe thing, like where in a country where it's very coastal based, in LA, New York, and glitz and glamour, out here in all these states, people want to puff their chests out and be prideful about something, whether it be their NBA basketball team or, their cost of living or whatever it is. So I do think that there's obviously an element of that where Pacers fans, can and should be basking in the fact that they are getting this attention, but all of it is deserved. This isn't like pat on the head attention. And what I mean by that is that, the Pacers beat the Knicks last year, and you guys know what was said about that. Oh, they're the hospital Knicks. And, oh, look at this cute story, like little Indiana. And, well, yeah, we're great. Oh, now they got Boston. Then they get swept out. And then it's, of course, they got swept and all of that. And it was almost like, oh, yeah, good job, Pacers. Oh, look at how cute is this? And now I think it's it's flipped completely, where people are really banging the table. National analysts who probably, some of whom may not have stepped in Indianapolis since like the Paul George, Roy Hibbert, LeBron James battles 10, 12 years ago, that are saying, no, look, like this team, they're in the Final Four now. They've got as good of a chance as anybody to win this whole thing. So I think that definitely matters to people, and it feels validating to people. We spent this whole year worrying about this team turning into the 2021 Hawks because everybody was saying that they're the 2021 Hawks. And now you can just kind of laugh at all of that, right? Because not only are they just as good as they were last year, they're better. Like this is definitively a better basketball team than the team last year. And a lot of times the paths in sports are not linear. And teams do this, and you have flukes. Like, the 2017 Jaguars led an AFC championship game in the fourth quarter, and they haven't been heard from since. You know what I mean? Like you have stuff that just flies out of nowhere, and happens sometimes. And I think to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, and last year wasn't just incredible injury luck, even though obviously the Pacers had some good fortune with injuries. And to do this, it just all feels validating, and it goes back to your original point, Facci, of the pride that people have to take in this run. This isn't a cute underdog story. This is a team that's 49-17 over the last 5 months. They're winning games at a 70% clip. Like this is an elite level basketball team. And if you want to, add in the 10-15 start, this team is light years ahead of where that team was over the first 6 weeks of the season. And I think that's why some people sort of were trapped into thinking that the Cavaliers were just going to easily take care of the Pacers in that series, when in reality, the Pacers over the last 5 months have been much closer to the Cavaliers level than they were to, the play-in round level.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, the Pacers have been playing great basketball, and you kind of set it up as, oh, the Pacers play the hospital Knicks, and oh, it was cute that they had a 4-game sweep against the Celtics. They were competitive, right? So I guess my question for you is, what would be more rewarding for the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals? Beating a healthy Knicks team or beating the Celtics, although they don't have Jason Tatum?
Finals is the finals, is how I would answer that. I don't care if they played one of Archie Miller's IU teams in the conference finals to get to the finals is the finals. You get to the finals, that's a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
And look at Miami a couple of years ago, right? Like you've had these teams make crazy runs as well. And, teams overlook other teams or whatever else. So they say, I'm a Yankee fan who lives with a Red Sox fan wife. And there was something about 2004, the fact that they got past the Yankees and not the Blue Jays in the ALCS to break the curse. Like, I understand that. Okay. Yeah. It made it for a bigger storyline and a bigger deal that finally they slayed Goliath, and then, nobody even remembers that they played the Cardinals in the World Series that year, right? But in this case for the Pacers, just getting to the finals, I don't care if it's the Knicks, I don't care if it's the Celtics, I don't care if it's the Wizards, I don't care. If you got to the finals, that's a big freaking deal, something that they've only done once in their NBA history. But this Knicks team is really good. So I don't even think it's a case of like them drawing some lesser opponent. Did the Knicks catch a break with some of these comebacks that are a little bit flukish and weird? Sure. And did they catch a break with the Tatum injury? Yeah, sure. But the Pacers have caught some breaks along the way as well. And this is a Knicks team that, kind of like last year's Pacers, this is a better version of last year's team for sure. Definitely at full health, they're a better version of last year's team. So I'm not even really looking at it like that. I think, Alex, most Pacers fans are happy with this matchup and not pining for it to be, a great Celtics team because of what Knicks Pacers means to certainly the older fans in the city. But even anybody that lived through last year, it was impossible. Even if you were born in 2002, it's impossible to not be swept up in what last year meant. You could tell that was just a different series. That was different than other playoff series that the Pacers have played before because of the Knicks and because of the history, even if you didn't happen to live through it or remember it.
Yeah, those were some fights. I mean, you got to remember the Pacers fell down 2-0 in that series. The Pacers had to go into MSG and win Game 7. They learned so much from that experience. But just looking at the playoff pool right now, it feels so wide open. Like, sure, the Denver Nuggets have won a championship, but there's just something about them that doesn't feel so scary. The Golden State Warriors, they're on life support. They could be done by the time you're listening to this episode. You know, you look at the OKC Thunder. Great regular season, haven't been there, haven't made that run. Boston looks like, although while we're recording this, they're going to win this game and push the series to 6. It feels like it's just a matter of time before they go down. The Knicks, they haven't been to an NBA final since 1999, and then you got the Pacers. So to me, it feels like the belief, it's through the roof. While it might look like I'm wearing a random white shirt on this episode, it's the Pacers NBA Finals shirt from 2000. That's how I want to believe right now is why can't we go back to the NBA Finals? But also, Schultz, give me a reason or two why we can't win the NBA Finals. This team is different, and this pool is wide open.
Yeah, I can't give you a reason, and that's a good feeling to have that I can't give you a reason. There is no reason why they can't win it all. And, this is a franchise that for as much success as they've had over the years, this is their 10th conference final appearance in the last 30 years, which is crazy to think about, right? There are a lot of teams that would love to have something like that. I mean, you just mentioned the Knicks haven't done it in a quarter century. But they are a franchise that has always had that glass ceiling. And they've always come up against that glass ceiling. And a lot of that is because just timing and circumstance and, oh, hey, congratulations, you get to play the Last Dance Bulls when you have your best team with Jordan and Pippen and Rodman. Oh, hey, congratulations, you get to, Shaq and Kobe have figured it out. And that's when you make the finals, right, for the first time. And
Shaq is 3.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just all that money can buy. Some of the greatest Hall of Famers you could ever think of. Not this time around, and that's what feels different.
Yeah, and you're catching in 2000. You're catching Shaq at his absolute apex. I mean, he was at his absolute peak. LeBron was he was peaking, 12 and 13, like he was peaking, which is weird because LeBron seemingly has had like a 15-year peak, but that was the peak, right? That was LeBron at his absolute best. Hell, that was Wade at his absolute best. I remember that game where they're throwing full court alley-oops to each other at Conseco Fieldhouse, and I'm like, oh my God, it was like 2-on-5. It was insane. You don't have that now, and I think for all the doubters that always say, well, it's the Pacers. They've never been there. They've never done that. Let's just say hypothetically. Because as you said, Facci, Celtics, we're talking about like it's a fait accompli. It's going to be Knicks Pacers. We all think it's going to be Knicks Pacers, but let's just pretend that it is for the sake of this show because we're taping this right now on Wednesday night. Let's say that the Final Four is Knicks, Pacers, Timberwolves, Thunder. Those 4 franchises. Knicks haven't won a title in 50 plus years, right? No one under the age of 50 remembers the Knicks winning a championship. They haven't been to a finals in over 25 years. Oklahoma City had that Russ, Harden, KD group, right? They made the finals once, but you got to go all the way back to the worst era of the NBA, the least competitive era of the NBA in the late 70s when nobody was watching and nobody remembers, but the Seattle Supersonics happened to win a title there. Who cares? They're in a different city. So what? Minnesota historically is one of the weakest franchises in the entire league, much less professional sports. So they've not been there and done that either, just as a franchise. So all those fan bases are kind of sitting in the same boat, like the Pacers thinking, hey, this is awesome. In a league where this has been a dynasty league for, I'm 42 years old. And for 35 of my 42 years on this earth, it's been a dynasty league. It's been Celtics and Lakers and Jordan's Bulls and Bad Boy Pistons and LeBron and the Warriors and all of that stuff. And now we've seen it over the last couple of years really kind of change and create some more parity. But you don't have to worry about somebody sitting on the throne and standing in your way because there is no one. There's no ring-wearing superstar that is standing in your way. And could SGA be that after this year? Sure. Could Anthony Edwards be that after yeah. But they're not now. They haven't done it yet. So it's exciting. It's exciting to think that, King Kong's not standing in the way. And the little Pacers can climb up to the top of the skyscraper and actually get it done without getting hurled back to their death 100 stories like we've seen in 98 and 2013 and 14 and all these other times that the Pacers have been here on this stage.
Yeah, it's surreal. It's one of those weird feelings where it's like, man, I feel confident about the Pacers' chances of getting to the finals. And then why not? Why not say the Pacers can't win one? I think that's a great point. But you talked about both the Knicks and the Pacers have gotten better this season. And I don't want to jump on the Knicks yet because we don't know what's going to happen with that series. But in terms of the Pacers, what areas have you seen them get better from last year to this year?
I think you've seen we always talked about the elite offense kind of saving the defense, and you're just like, man, if they could just be a league average defense, they'd be okay. I think you've seen some individual improvement defensively, notably from guys who we've criticized in the past. Like, no one's ever going to call Tyrese Halliburton a great defender, right? But he at least doesn't, he's not a liability out there, or at least hasn't been at times in this playoffs. In fact, there have been some stretches, late in I'm trying to think if it was game 5 against Milwaukee, maybe one of the Milwaukee games where, he played well on that end. In the Cleveland game, Cleveland series, I think he held his own for the most part. He did okay. So I think you've seen some individual improvements there. I think the playoff experience really helped guys like Andrew Nembhard, who has now just kind of continued that into a second year. You've seen growth. Aaron Nesmith has become an even more well-rounded player, and he's had a terrific postseason so far. It's weird to think that Miles Turner, you can say that you've seen improvement from, but God, he's having the best postseason of his life, and it's making it for, I know we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but making it for a very interesting offseason with what's going to happen there. So I think defensively is an area where you've seen some individual improvements, and that's helped the team overall. They still are prone to the wild swings where they'll have stretches where they look terrible, and then stretches they look amazing. You're like, why can't they do this all the time, with consistency? But I think they're finding that a little bit more consistency-wise. I think there was a feeling that maybe, what they found with Obi Toppin or TJ McConnell and some of that stuff was not sustainable. And for the most part, even though McConnell hasn't necessarily been great these playoffs, for the most part, the bench has remained decent, and you've gotten good minutes from those guys. But really, I just think I think it's invaluable for them to have gone through the experience that they went through last year. And I think, I don't think, for instance, last night, they get down, what was it, 18, 19 points to Cleveland. I'm not so sure last year's team comes back and wins that game. I wonder if last year's team is kind of like, we're so good at home, we're fine. I think there's a little more to this year's team and a little more sense of urgency. I still remember watching game 1 in Milwaukee last year and thinking they're not ready for this at all. Like, what are we doing here? Like they're treating this like it's a Wednesday in January. And then, of course, ultimately, they ended up winning that series, and they had some great moments in that series. But I think, having the experience, again, kind of going back to my initial point about, been there, done that. It's just so important. It's cliched and stupid and all that, but it really is true in this league. It's so important to have kind of gone through the wars, because every single eventual champion, or a huge majority of them over the last 40 years kind of did that. They had to kind of, go through it and fail a couple of times before they finally came through. Even the great ones, Jordan, LeBron, the great individual talents, all those guys had to go through something like that instead of it just being boom, first time you're in, instant success. But I just think we're largely seeing the same pieces as last year, right? I think the difference is you get a full season of Siakam, I guess, this time around. But I think just slight individual improvements has just made the sum of its parts, which is what the Pacers are, really, a sum of its parts team, that much better.
Do you think this is like the ultimate example of kind of like patience and kind of like almost like homegrown? Because when you look at this team, they made it pretty clear last year that they were going to be banking on internal growth. And it was like internal growth. Okay, like how many steps forward can a Jarris Walker or a Ben Shepherd take or anything like that? But you look at this and it's like Andrew Nembhard took leaps forward. Aaron Nesmith has really developed. Like, obviously, the chemistry that you have with Halliburton and this group. Matherin's had some really big moments. They just kept it. They ran it back, which typically is not what you want to hear as a Pacer fan. Like, there were people that were saying, how do we not make a move at the deadline? Like, trading James Wiseman's contract just to get it off the books was not anything that excited anybody. But now you look at this roster, they didn't panic. They kept it together. And now all of a sudden it looks like a team that is under contract together for the most part for years to come, can continue to take steps. You don't have this small window that's like 1 year or 2 years. You got Siakam under contract. You got Halliburton under contract. You have Nembhard under contract. Like, plenty of that. So does it feel like this is something that, hey, maybe it's back-to-back conference finals, but maybe this could be start of a bit of a long run?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be, and the Pacers in their history, Facci, have always sort of they haven't had like a fly-by-night team and then go into the tank the next year, right? It's always been sustained runs. Obviously the Reggie teams dipped after, it's kind of like two runs, right? It was 94, 95, and then like a little dip, and then 98, 99, 2000. But for the most part, we look at that kind of as a big chunk. And then you've got the 12 and 13 teams, and 14 teams, with their seasons and kind of, getting a little bit farther, second round, and then conference finals. And now this team with back-to-back conference finals. So I think the Pacers history has shown that is sustainable, but I would caution with, yes, you're right with the contracts and with the guys that they have locked in and the ages. You would think that all of this is sustainable and the Pacers could be in the conference finals in 26 and 27 and have these championship shots, but you just don't know. You just don't know because there's luck and circumstance and timing and kind of all those things. But as far as like patience and, team building, I'm not as focused on the whole like built versus bought thing. Like people that take pride in the fact that the Pacers aren't big players in free agency and they have to draft and they have to be more savvy with trades. Yeah, like 100%. That's true. The Pacers have to build their team differently than the Knicks and the Heat and the Bulls and the Lakers and teams like that do. So just like the Timberwolves, just like these other teams, because they're not a free agent destination, right? But to me, it's just all about fit and just get pieces that fit, that get it, that, if I was Aaron Nesmith and I'm making $11 million a year, I'd be real unhappy because I'd be thinking to myself, I should be making double that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He'd be worth it.
And he's not, or at least doesn't appear to be. He certainly doesn't play like he's unhappy right now. Right. Or Pascal Siakam could have gone anywhere. And yeah, I understand, the money was hard to turn down and all of that, but he did at the end of the day, he chose to stay in Indianapolis, Indiana. So, those are the kind of guys that you need. Those are the kind of guys that the Pacers have always needed to win. And when you're bringing in outside guys that don't necessarily fit, we can see, sometimes the disastrous results of that. I'm just trying to think of, Evan Turner and Andrew Bynum and, recent examples like that. I mean, they got cute for a while and they started bringing in guys that are just like, I don't know, just we need scoring. So Monte Ellis, all right, come on down. You know what I mean? And ultimately those pieces didn't really fit. And even if you go to the teams that had more success, like the Brogdon, Warren, Sabonis teams, and they had some other circumstances that had nothing to do with on-court play, like health and things like that, where it was tough to get all of those guys. But, even watching them, you thought to yourself, that's just not right here. It just doesn't feel quite like everything is working and is cohesive together. And now you watch the Pacers and it feels like you can tell that they know each other's tendencies and that there's, chemistry and all that good stuff that we end up talking about where, they understand what each person's role is. And if somebody is dropping the ball, which happens every night, somebody's there to pick it up. And so, you can't say enough about the job that Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan have done to put this thing together after, it's hard to believe, but January 2022 is not that long ago. Yeah. And January 2022 is when they essentially did a soft reset on this whole thing. Well, and they made the Halliburton trade and the whole deal. And look at where they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a quick turnaround, and it's been an awesome thing to see. I think Pacer fans would be lying if they said they expected back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances in 24 and now 2025. But I talked with Kevin Bowen after the Bucks series and kind of did a recap of that. And so now that we're kind of talking about this after the Cavs series, I'm curious, from your perspective, who do you think was the MVP of the Pacers in the 5-game series against the Cavs? And now that we have a 10-game sample size, who do you think has been the best player for the Pacers so far throughout the playoffs?
Oh, the best part about this question is that I think there are both questions. I think there are several acceptable or at least defensible
Yes,
answers, right? I just keep going back to when he's really good, they're just so difficult to beat. And I people are probably thinking that I'm going to say Tyrese Halliburton, right? Because of the stat where he scores at least 20 points and the Pacers are like 703 or something like. When he's really good, they're very difficult to beat on both ends is Miles Turner. And I just feel like what he's done, and obviously, last night wasn't necessarily a great, numbers or scoring game, but the chase down block and some of the rebounding, he had several big blocks in that game. I just think Turner kind of did some of the little things, and it shows his growth as a player that, even when the shots aren't falling or maybe he's not even getting shots, he could still make himself impact the game. But man, Turner's been so good in these playoffs. But you would say that a lot about, several of these guys. I mean, Aaron Nesmith's been the same way. Andrew Nembhard maybe he's been a little more feast or famine, but he's had some big standout games. To me, probably speaking, just overall, still the most valuable player is Tyrese, just because 31 points in a closeout game. And he just does so much that even when, the numbers aren't there, what he did to finish game 2 and even some ordinary performances against Milwaukee that were saved by the late game heroics. Like, the playoffs are about the heroics. When we talk about the greatness of Reggie Miller, people don't really care about the 3-point record and stuff like that. Like, so what? I mean, Reggie Miller made what 3 All-NBA teams? Like, people didn't really focus on those things. They focused on what he did in May and June. And so for Halliburton to have those moments, I think that automatically makes him, the MVP, where even if the Pacers, they're not going to get swept next round, but even like they got swept next round, this would be a memorable postseason just because of the heroics largely led by Halliburton in some of those just insane comeback wins in game 5 and game 2. And then what he was able to do in a closeout game in Cleveland. So I think the MVP is overall is Halliburton, even more than Turner and some of these others. But yeah, the Cavs series itself, I think I could still argue Turner for that. Game 5 was probably statistically his worst game, and that was still a good game. I mean, what'd you give him? Like a B minus, probably. And a lot of those other games were A. Certainly game 4. Game 4, it's almost like game 4 did a disservice to the Pacers because if they really wanted, Siakam could have gone for 40. If they really wanted to. I mean, if that game wasn't such a laugher, what do you take, 10 shots? Yeah, and he made 9 of them, right?
9 of 10.
I mean, if he played a real game, if that was like a 15 or 20 point game, like Siakam would have gone for 40 and Turner would have had 25 and whatever. So it's almost like looking at the stat sheet doesn't even kind of do it justice. But gun to my head, I feel confident in saying that I think Halliburton is still, even for some of the light games, like what we saw in game 3 against Cleveland. Overall, because of the heroics, I give him the edge for the MVP. But for the Cleveland series, I'm actually going to give it to Turner just because I think he's been nails this entire postseason. But he was great in that Cleveland series too.
You know what nails means? Facci didn't even know what that meant.
I did not know. I did not know it was catching on like this because clearly.
Oh yeah. I'm the old guy here.
That's what I'm saying. You're up on it. Like, no offense to you, Derek, but like you're up on it.
No cap.
Look at the Grays over here. Like,
I must have been living under a rock. So you learn something every day. But for me, I would say MVP. I'd probably go Halliburton just because I feel like it's the game winner. That really changed this series in that game.
Yeah,
this
I
could
agree.
be a completely different series if it was 1-1. And then
I thought he was great in game 1 too, Facci. I mean, he was scoring at all 3 levels.
He was. I mean, we're talking about 22 and 13. I mean, like literally that you can't ask for anything else. He was really good there, but like he had that slow performance, but we talked about it. He had 8 points in the final minute in the game winner. If you don't win that game and Cleveland wins game 3, which they did, they're up 2-1. So, and then also Tyrese in the closeout game, he was huge. He was unbelievable. So I think there's so many different answers. You could probably give Andrew Nembhard some votes. The defense that Nembhard played at times, plus he took his game to the next level. Nesmith, obviously, I know, no offense, it sounds kind of crazy to say Aaron Nesmith was the MVP, but he did have some really good games. And I feel like, Siakam had his moments, but you couldn't give him MVP. I would lean Tyrese Halliburton, but I would also just say, like, I saw this stat going around. This is crazy. The Pacers became the first team since 1987 to have all 5 starting players average 14 or more. That's something that we haven't seen in a lot of our lifetimes. So, we're going that far back to just be like, wow, this is a deep, complete team that doesn't have to rely on a Donovan Mitchell, go out there and get us 40 because our second guy might go scoreless. I mean, that's something that they dealt with. Ty Jerome was a guy for them that was being benched when the series was coming towards the end. Indiana can rely on many players, but I would say Tyrese is, if you want to be at your best, it's when he's at his best.
Yeah, Facci, real quick, I will just ask you this because I'm curious your thoughts. Could you make the case that Rick Carlisle has been the MVP of the playoffs so far for the Pacers because of how he's handled the adjustments, the way he's handled the rotation? I mean, obviously the guys have gone out there and won these games, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's just ran circles really around both coaches. And I remember asking you this before the series, Schultz. I said, Kenny Atkinson versus Rick Carlisle. Do you think the Pacers have that much of an upper hand? And you said, I really like Kenny Atkinson. And I felt like
I do, yeah.
and I think he's a good coach, but I felt like, man, he was just outmatched in this series. I just feel like the one bad game the Pacers had was a game 3 where they were kind of feeling confident in what they had just done. They had a longer break too as well. Cavs were more desperate. Pacers just punched them in the mouth in game 4 with that incredible first half. So I'm just curious, both of you guys, I'll let you go first, Facci, and then Schultz follow up. But Rick Carlisle, I mean, how much credit does he deserve for how good this team's been so far?
A lot. Kenny's big adjustment was going to zone in game 3. But that was it. That was all that was in the bag. He was searching after it. The bag was empty. And Carlisle knew how to respond. And when he matched it and was able to make those adjustments in game 4, the Cavs had no response. Their response was basically to start to shorten the rotation as the series went on, when that was a lot of the Cavs' strength this year, was they were a deep team. So I feel like Rick Carlisle is probably not getting enough respect amongst Pacer fans at this time, because when things got bad, Carlisle got blamed a lot, and some was rightfully so, and some wasn't. Think about this. Remember how many times we've knocked Carlisle on not taking a timeout late and just letting his players play? But then you see numerous game winners that have happened, and it's the trust in his players to be able to make big plays in big moments. And that's what Tyrese did in this game. He could have called a timeout. Maybe that game winner never even happens. So I just feel like, and then when he's had to call timeout, look what they've drawn up earlier this year, like the 4 wide receiver, routes play, like that worked out perfectly. So I think that Carlisle is a guy that's been there, and the coach of the year, that's a regular season award. And in the playoffs, it's all different. It's about who's been there in those moments. And Carlisle has been in a lot of playoff moments.
And Alex, like this may have just been, some of the playoffs is just luck. Some of it, just good fortune, I should say. Luck almost has a negative connotation, like you didn't earn it. Everything is earned. You got to go out and make shots and win the game and the whole deal. But I keep going back to that game 2 in Cleveland where he stuck with the bench. Like he sat the starters way too long. I thought, right? And I'm like, are you going to try? Like, are they just happy to go back to Indiana 1-1, or, what are we doing here? And they come all the way back in game 2 with that insane rally at the end of the game. And it was almost like mad scientist type stuff, right? Where, wait a minute, are we just all stupid and Carlisle's really smart? And don't get me wrong, Rick Carlisle's forgotten more basketball than I'll ever know in my life. But, that's what it felt like. Like, just every button he's pressed, even if some of these decisions that he's made have just been based on a confluence of events that no one had any control over, has been the right one. And whereas I think some of the Bucks shortcomings, that I'm very much low man on Doc Rivers. I've never felt like he's a very good coach at all. I don't feel that way about Kenny Atkinson. And you're right. I think he ran circles around him. And once the shots weren't falling for Cleveland, they were just completely out of answers. They didn't know how to respond to the fact that, oh wait, if we're not going to hit a bunch of threes, how are we going to win these games? And Carlisle always seems to kind of scrap and find a way, but he also has a roster guys of guys that are just a little bit different. I think there aren't a lot of teams that would come back from two separate 19-point deficits. I understand that one of the 19-point deficits was from the first quarter last night, which first quarter an NBA game, whatever. But the Pacers, every time you think they're dead and buried, it just feels like they've got a little bit of life. And I think Carlisle realizes that too, but just squeezing every drop of every player that he has on the roster. Thomas Bryant having the Thomas Bryant game yesterday. I don't know how much credit you give Rick Carlisle for, but if it's me, I'm probably real squeamish to play Thomas Bryant, right? He's not. He puts him out there, and it's a results business, and he got results out of it. So, can't say enough. We're putting cart way ahead of the horse here, but, with where the Pacers are today, like, let's say hypothetically they're going farther than this. Guys, if he was an NBA coach that would take the Dallas Mavericks to an NBA championship and then potentially the Indiana Pacers franchise to the NBA championship, to me, that's worth like 5 or 6 of Phil Jackson's rings. So, yeah. I mean, that would be an incredible accomplishment given, that those franchises have not been there, done that, and did not have, the I guess, either the legendary players like Jordan and, Dirk was a great player, right? But Jordan and Kobe and Shaq and guys like that. He's a phenomenal coach, Hall of Fame coach, and he's showing it.
I was telling Alex last episode, if there's any doubt that Carlisle is anything less than a Hall of Fame coach, this is the time to put that, solidification on it as to like if he takes the Pacers to a finals or obviously wins a ring. I mean, that's when it's a no-brainer. You've officially been stamped as you are an official absolute Hall of Famer. So, but the last question I got for you is now with the Boston Celtics extending this series. I believe this series now in the Eastern Conference Finals wouldn't start until next Wednesday, I believe. So that gives the Pacers a little bit more than a week off. Now, in some scenarios, that's perfect. In others, is it a little bit too much rust when this team's playing great? How would you like to kind of tiptoe this line? Is there a scenario where you would have maybe wanted to have game one be on Saturday? Or is it, hey, you know what? They're going to get some great rest. They're also going to be able to game plan and be well more prepared with a leg up on the competition. How would you like to play out this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I'm not a big momentum guy. I'm just not. But if I would have my druthers here, the Pacers would be playing tomorrow.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I just, maybe part of me is just like, I don't want this ride to end. Like, don't pause the ride. You know what I mean? Like, I'm on the ride. Like, let's go. Like, let's, get the carny to crank the wheel or whatever. Like, let's keep this thing going. So, it'll be very difficult, I think, even for, fans to kind of ramp back up for next Wednesday, if that's indeed when this series is going to start. But I think rest probably is always good. I mean, God, you guys saw, and they had injuries and things like that, but the Cavs were just, they were tapping out, man. Like they were just ready to tap out. They were just kind of like enough. And I can't really blame them. By the time that you get to this time of year, I don't care if you're quote unquote healthy. Even the quote unquote healthy teams really aren't fully healthy. So Turner and Nesmith and Nembhard and Halliburton, those guys, I think they'll be happy to take the rest. But I don't think that it'll have an impact on them. I think they fully understand, especially having gone through it last year, they fully understand the opportunity that's at hand here. Or else they should. I mean, I'd be shocked if they don't. So I'm thinking that is I'm thinking / hoping that that's a non-factor, but I don't think that it matters. I think it matters more for guys like us because I'm bummed that I have to wait a week to see them play basketball again. Yeah, I think it's actually probably a benefit for them to just kind of chill out a little bit. And I'm not worried about, they're going to read their press clippings and hear about how great they are. This team, they look pretty locked in to me, and I would be surprised if they are suddenly, they're still going to be wearing road jerseys, game 1 and game 2, and I always feel more comfortable starting on the road. I don't know why. Something about just this team and their attitude. It almost feels better to start a series as and they'll be an underdog. You know it, just like they were against Cleveland. They'll be an underdog against the Knicks, or even hell, they'll be a betting underdog against the Celtics without Tatum.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think they're actually in a great spot right here.
Yeah, and if they get past either of the Celtics or the Knicks and get to the finals, of course they're going to be an underdog there too. So they're just going to constantly ride the underdog wave until this thing is officially over. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think for the most part, the Pacers this season specifically, they've responded really well to having time off. They use that time very well to get their bodies right, and they practice right. And I think Carlisle is going to do a really great job of making sure they're staying focused and keeping their eyes on the prize that's ahead, because obviously this is a great opportunity. And for Rick Carlisle to say that post game, that the league's wide open, that to me is a sign that Rick Carlisle is trying to, not put pressure on his team, but get them to focus even more, because this is a huge opportunity for them. And like you mentioned earlier in the episode, the 4 teams that could potentially be in the NBA Finals are all teams that haven't won or been in that spot really ever. So really awesome opportunity here for so many cool franchises. But Schultz, as we get this thing wrapped up, I know we haven't really previewed anything like that because we don't know who they're going to play, but from your standpoint, I mean, do you think the Pacers are more likely to make the NBA Finals or more likely to go out to either the Celtics or the Knicks?
I'm now at the point where I am expecting them to beat the next opponent, especially with the Tatum injury. Now, if this was a healthy Tatum in the Celtics and it was the Celtics, I might feel differently. But I'm expecting them to beat the next opponent. I'll say this though: the Knicks series to me is like a virtual coin flip. I felt pretty strongly that they were a better team than Milwaukee, and they showed that. I felt pretty strongly that Cleveland was a better team than them, and it didn't go that way. So my pre-series inclinations haven't always been great, but a lot of people are going to be acting like last year was a fluke and the Knicks were banged up and they're so much better this year, and they're just going to be focusing on what the Knicks weren't last year and what they were this year, and not focusing on what the Pacers weren't last year and what they are this year. And I'm worried that they're going to miss the boat again, but I'm just fully confident. I'm done doubting this team. The last doubt that I had for this team was the last time that I came on the show and I picked the Cavs in 7, and now I'm just not going to do it anymore. So I'm expecting them to win the next series. Yeah, even though I think obviously the Knicks or even the Celtics without Tatum present a whole lot of challenges. It's saying that the Pacers are in a great spot and saying that they're potentially facing a bunch of teams that haven't been there, done that, doesn't mean that they're still going to have to go out and do it. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. Even if it's Pacers Nuggets or something like that, or, Pacers Warriors or whatever, it's not going to be easy. So I don't want to make it sound like, hey, the guys on the Pacers podcast made it sound like a fait accompli. They're going to get the fun. No, I don't think it's a fait accompli at all. I'm just done doubting the Pacers. That's where I'm at.
I am done doubting them. You couldn't pay me to. I believe in this team. Something just feels different. We've watched a lot of Pacer teams over the years, and a lot of the times it's felt like, well, if this goes the right way, or if this guy doesn't play the next game, maybe. No, it just feels like, look, this team right now, they're healthy. They are healthy. They're playing good. Their chemistry, in my opinion, might be the best in the playoffs out of anyone. I really do feel like this team is together. You talked about teams in the past before. I don't know if they really liked each other. Like when basketball was over, like was Sabonis hanging out with Brogdon or anything like was that really happening? Like this team is really just here for each other, and I just feel like that's something that feels a little bit different compared to the rest of the teams out there. And man, I just feel like don't count us out. I ain't gonna say Pacers in 5. I know we won the last few by 5.
Why not, Fosh?
It to me, I know I'm always skeptical, but what I am saying is we're going to get the job done. We are going to get the job done, and we don't need to have home court in order to do it because we can win on the road. And then that's a lot of other teams can't say the same thing. We can win on the road, and for that, hey, it's just a matter of time. The biggest issue I have right now is waiting until game 1. All right, that's my big problem right now, because what am I going to do with a week to go? But Alex, we'll turn the ball over to you. What is your belief right now? NBA Finals or not?
I mean, I'm the only one that picked the Pacers in both series.
What do you got this time?
I think I've been believing for a while. I don't know. It feels different, obviously, with the Tatum injury. I hate that for Boston just because, Tatum is such a good dude, right? Like, I like Jason Tatum as a player. Like, he doesn't really annoy me. Like, whatever. He shoots too many threes. Yes, I agree with that. Like, it drives me nuts that he does that a lot. But it definitely does give you this opportunity here where it's like, man, the Pacers are playing so good right now. And we talked about this last night, Facci. Like, I can't believe that the Pacers are in this spot potentially to be here. I never would have imagined that at this point in terms of where they were just at in the rebuild. So now, just fast forward a couple of years, and here they are at a chance maybe to be in the finals. And yeah, I told James Boyd at Game 3 of Cleveland Pacers, I said, whoever wins this series is going to the NBA Finals. And I said it then, and that was before the Tatum injury. So I don't know why. Maybe you got the rose-colored glasses on, but I believe, Facci, I believe in the Pacers, and I'm not being just a homer. I think they have what it takes to beat both this version of the Celtics and the Knicks in a 7-game series, and I think that they are going to have the better coach in that series as well. So, whatever chip on the shoulder they need, I think they've got it. I think they're going to make it. I think they're going to go to the NBA Finals this year, and it's crazy to say it.
That it is. It really is. Well, hey, Derek, we really appreciate you coming back on. It's always a blast. I'm still confident we have not seen the last of you before this season ends. But please, before we hop off, tell everybody where they could find you at on social media, but some of the awesome content that you're always putting out throughout the week.
Yeah, at Schultz975 on X. If you want to check that out there, I'm usually tweeting games, not as much as Alex, but I'll throw in a thought or two every once in a while.
Do I tweet too much?
No, not you. Indianapolis Business Journal as well. Every other week with my buddy Mark Monteith. We have some Pacers coverage usually that's mixed in there, and then Jake and I do our show. Thankfully, we won't have to worry about a playoff conflict this week, so it'll be a Tuesday night. Actually, I think we're doing Monday anyway because we both have a conflict on Tuesday. So now the Pacers finally aren't playing on a Tuesday, and we're still gonna have the show on a Monday. But Tuesday night's on IC Sports Network, and we stream it on YouTube and do the podcast channel and all that. But Foch, I want to make sure. Did we get pasty arms, Alex? After
we get them after games. Yeah, no. Look
at this. I've been coaching Little League baseball.
Look at that farmer's tan.
And look at this sick farmer's tan that we have there. Yeah,
some good games. Huh?
It's from my son's Little League games. Yeah. So
all right.
Hey, I can't make fun of the pasty, man. I am pasty as
Elmer's glue. I got that paste on these arms. But
I think Schultz, if you come back on for a post game show, you might have to go. You might have to go with a jersey with no shirt underneath.
Yeah, I mean,
join the pasty club.
Schultz, you might have to join us. It's a movement right now.
I've been wearing a jersey with a shirt underneath. I'm not doing that to myself or my wife. She begged me not to do that. So
I'll admit that you guys do not want me to wear a basketball jersey because the only 2 basketball jerseys that I actually still own and I can't bring myself to throw away
Knicks jerseys
are a Patrick Ewing and a Larry Johnson.
Jersey. God,
especially not the LJ. No,
sorry,
that opens up wounds.
Sorry, no, you're not.
Yeah, maybe not.
I can't do it. It's a part of my past.
Can I ask you a weird question in this podcast? Just because it was a conversation me and Facci had the other night.
Yeah.
Facci goes, I got to go get a shirt. I got to be quiet when I go to bed. I got to get a shirt and take this jersey off. I'm not going to sleep in a jersey. And I said, why do you got to sleep with a shirt on? He goes, I'm a sleep with a shirt shirt on kind of guy. And I said, really? I said, who does that? Do a lot of people sleep with their shirts on? So I'm curious. Are you a shirt on or shirt off kind of person?
No, I get hot. I get hot a lot. So shirt off.
I'm not saying I'm sleeping with socks on, but I mean, what, sleeping with a shirt, is this like uncivilized?
It gets in your way.
I mean, is that where we're at now?
I'm just asking. I mean, it's not weird, is it?
And then you wake up and it's like stuck to you, and like
I mean, I don't know how hot your place is if you live in like a swamp, but it's like,
if you move it all in your sleep, your shirt gets twisted. That's uncomfortable.
I prefer like a perfectly cool home where it's like, I'm comfortable. But I mean, sleeping with a shirt, is this like a savage move now? Like, socks, jeans.
It's a very modest move.
That, but yeah, I go with a shirt. It's always worked out. I'm perfectly cool. If I get a little hot, I could stick a leg out.
You're perfectly cool, Facci.
I'm perfectly cool. I'm hip. I know the slang.
No cap, sling.
The slang. I got it right these days. But hey, that's me with the shirt. That's what I look like underneath a blanket.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to end.
A good way to end,
guys. Yeah,
that's how we're gonna go. Hey, listeners, let us know if you also sleep with a shirt on, or if that's the craziest.
If you don't want to let us know, you don't have to let us know.
A week full of shirt or no shirt content on setting the pace before game one.
Let's put a poll out in the Chat BCC group chat. Let's put a poll out in the Chat BCC group chat, part of our sponsor here at the Blue Wire Podcast Network, and we'll get a poll. And guys and girls can vote on this. It's not just one gender, so feel free, ladies, to vote if you wear a shirt or not. I just want to know if Facci's in the majority or the minority. Me and Schultz are kind of tag teaming up on him, but I mean we're just two people, so it's not that big of a sample size here.
And here I am thinking he was going to ask you, Schultz, a personal question. Can I ask you something like, personal or whatever it was, however you worded it? I'm like, oh, wow, where's he going with this? And it just turns out I'm the target of it.
Like, you're the one that said you had to get a shirt to sleep that night. I'm just curious.
It was a couple episodes ago. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to come up right now, but hey, you know what? That's what it is. I am breaking my stance. If it's the middle of summer, maybe that could be another day. All right. But, we're in May. It's still decent out. It's
almost summer now. What are you talking about?
Almost.
This guy is a nutcase, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, Schultz, it's always good to have you back. Facci, of course, we love when you're back on the show and when you're able to make it. Hopefully baby's doing all right. Hopefully you're getting some sleep. But we'll be back tomorrow. Bryce Simon's going to be joining us. He's the co-host of the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini and also covers the Detroit Pistons. So thought it'd be good to get his perspective on this Pacers team number one and then how the Pistons were able to kind of make things difficult for the Knicks in round one. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy that podcast. But with that being said, we're going to sign off with how we always sign off here on Setting the Pace. So, Facci, if you're hoping the Pacers, when they play eventually on Wednesday, get a win against whoever they play, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.